Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Some massive news coming out of the Ohio State program as former offensive coordinator with a cup of coffee at Ohio State, Bill O'Brien, leaving Ohio State to take the head coaching job at Boston College. And that opens up a massive offensive coordinator position for the Ohio State Buckeyes heading into 2024. And make no mistake about it, two things that really pop out. And we're going to talk about some candidates that I think are really good fits for Ohio State. This is the most attractive job in college football right now. Running the offense for Ohio State, working with Ryan Day, with all the talent that Ohio State not only has this year in 2024, but is going to have for the next couple of years at this program, represents a massive opportunity for someone to come in and coach an offense that really can be a juggernaut for the next couple of years. But secondly, and I think most importantly, the one thing we've been talking about with Ohio State the last couple of weeks is this team and this program, it means business, for lack of better terms. Ryan Day is going to go out and get extremely aggressive in terms of bringing in another offensive coordinator. You saw him get aggressive with the Bill O'Brien hire. You saw him get extremely aggressive in the transfer portal. Guys like Judkins, Will Howard, Caleb Downs. There is no doubt in my mind Ryan Day is going to go big game hunting for the next offensive coordinator at Ohio State. Want to talk about a few candidates that really have emerged and I think would be really good fits to run this program. Before we get into it, as always, just want to say thank you to you guys. And it has been an extremely busy last couple of weeks for the Ohio State Buckeyes, obviously crushing it on the recruiting trail, crushing it in the transfer portal, talking about the next offensive coordinator. Cannot thank you guys enough for rocking with the fellas. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And more importantly, would love to hear your feedback, your choices for Ohio State's next offensive coordinator in the comment section. We'll chop it up there. And without further ado, let's get into it. I have three names. I think we'll dive into this as the following weeks play out. But I want to talk about one name that I think would be a dynamite hire. And I get it's a very controversial name. I've read the message boards and I've read Twitter, and I know Ohio State fans are really polarized by this name, but that's Chip Kelly, current head coach at UCLA. Two things that jump out to me about Chip Kelly. One, he clearly doesn't want to be a head coach, and I don't think he's a great head coach in the modern day of college football, right? This is a guy that is an offensive mastermind, one of the best pure football coaches in all of football, but doesn't necessarily want to play the game of being a head coach at the college football level. And so you saw him look to go to the NFL, didn't get a job there. I think he would come into Ohio State, be the offensive coordinator, not necessarily have the head coaching responsibilities, and really just get into coaching football and running a really good offense. That is what Chip Kelly really exceeds at. And you take a look at why Chip Kelly makes so much sense. Obviously, the past with Ryan Day and Chip Kelly at the NFL level with the Eagles, with the 49ers, that's the first thing that makes sense. But more importantly, when you're trying to hire an offensive coordinator, I mean, you're looking for an elite offensive mind. And a lot of the questions will go to, well, can Chip Kelly recruit for Ohio State? Because he didn't recruit very well at UCLA. My argument to there is it doesn't really matter. You look at how Ryan Day has constructed this staff. Ohio State has elite recruiters all over this staff. So the offensive coordinator, yes, you want them to be solid recruiters, but I am not worried about what Ohio State is doing on the recruiting trail. We're seeing them absolutely crush it. So you're looking at an offensive coordinator that can really kind of inject some energy into this offense, and specifically in that 2024 year where you have a guy like Will Howard, the projected starter, very good with his legs. You look at Chip Kelly, he's had a ton of success with mobile quarterbacks, using them and using their athleticism. That one would make sense for me. Number two, I mean, I don't think Chip Kelly gets enough credit for truly revolutionizing the sport of football, both at the NFL and college level. You are talking about one of the more influential offensive minds in all of football. And so you bring him in to coach this offense with all the weapons that Ohio State has at their disposal. It's hard to not see this Ohio State offense being a top one offense in the country next year. When you take a look at Will Howard, Judkins, Travion Henderson, Emeka Buka, Tate, Jeremiah Smith coming in as a true freshman, the amount of weapons that Chip Kelly would have at his disposal, and then the amount of young quarterbacks that Chip Kelly would have to work with in terms of development, guys like Aaron Nolan and Julian Sayin, to me, this seems like a no-brainer hire in terms of bringing in Chip Kelly. And so I get there's some question marks about Chip Kelly. Some people would argue that he's a washed-up coach. And yes, has he experienced a ton of success at UCLA? Maybe not, but I think that has to do more with his lack of ability to recruit with teams like Oregon out there in the Pac-12, as opposed to him not being a good football coach. Because if you're just arguing about pure coaching the sport of football on the offensive side of the football, I don't think it gets much better than Chip Kelly. And again, the recruiting questions I don't think are that meaningful, because you look at Ryan Day and how he's hired the staff around him, they're all elite recruiters. So I'm not necessarily too concerned about the recruiting for Chip Kelly if he comes to Ohio State. The second name that I think would be relatively interesting for Ohio State is Eric Bieniemy, a guy that, again, you have questions about. Can he come to the college ranks and get it going on the recruiting trail? Obviously, spending a ton of time the last decade at the NFL level. I mean, Eric Bieniemy, the proof's in the pudding, right? He goes to the Washington Commanders, does not have a very good season in 2023. I think you make a much stronger argument that he just didn't have the talent around him, as opposed to him being a bad offensive mind. He's looking for a job. It obviously did not work out in terms of getting a new offensive coordinator job at the NFL this year. He's a free agent. And yes, is Eric Bieniemy going to come to Ohio State and stay there for 10 plus years? Probably not, but he would be a very, very intriguing offensive mind to bring into this Ohio State team and kind of get this thing going in the right direction with all the talent that they have. Now, the last guy that I'll talk about here is Joe Moorhead. And I think Joe Moorhead certainly, sitting head coach at Akron, a program that is historically extremely hard to win at. You look at Joe Moorhead as a coach in the past, very, very good couple of years as the offensive coordinator for the Oregon Ducks, was actually a pretty good head coach at Mississippi State. Obviously got fired for some extracurricular type stuff that was going on with that program. And again, maybe not the best head coach in terms of managing a program. But again, just like Chip Kelly, you're talking about one of the more well-respected offensive minds in this sport. And so I think Joe Moorhead would make a ton of sense for this Ohio State team as well. And I think to kind of tie a bow on this situation, I'm looking at this opportunity that Ryan Day and Ohio State has and saying, this is one, Ryan Day has shown us that he is kind of playing some serious ball right now in terms of building this roster and building this coaching staff. There are not expenses being spared. This is a very aggressive last couple months for Ohio State. Ryan Day is going to go big game hunting for this one. And so I think Chip Kelly certainly would kind of qualify as big game hunting. And number two, if you're a offensive coordinator that's looking for a kind of a spot to really catapult your career, what better spot than this Ohio State team? You come into this Ohio State team, again, you look at the roster right now in 2024 and say, this is probably going to be one of the best offenses in the country. So you have immediate success in 2024, but then you look at the future. What does it look like in 2025 and in 2026? You have guys like Lincoln Kienholz, Aaron Nolan, Julian Sayin, and at the wide receiver position, Carnell Tate, Jeremiah Smith, guys like Mylan Graham. It is going to be an offense that's not only good in 2024, it's going to be an offense that's really good in 2025 and in 2026. So if you are an offensive coordinator looking for a spot to really catapult your career, this Ohio State offensive coordinator position has to be number one on the list. And you have the conversation about, oh, well, do we want to hire an offensive coordinator that is not going to stay at Ohio State for 5+ years? I don't think that matters. You look at all the top programs across the country, Nick Saban when he was at Alabama, Kirby Smart at Georgia. When you are making good hires at your coordinator spots, those guys are going to move up the ranks, right? Nick Saban consistently having to rehire around him. That means that you're making good hires. So you should be looking for a hire that is, going to get some outside interest after a couple of years at Ohio State, because that means they did a good job. And so I'm looking at Chip Kelly as being a guy that, in my mind, would be my number one option for Ohio State. I know that's a hotly contested conversation. Would love to hear from you guys in the comment section there, but I think Chip Kelly would probably be my number one coach on the hot board. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas. Wanted to hop on, give you guys some of my thoughts, some of my takes. Appreciate all the support you guys have shown. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.